My name is Deirdre, and at 68 years old, I never expected to be fighting for my own home. After 40 years in the beautiful colonial house where I raised my son James and loved my late husband, I thought I knew what family meant. When James married Amanda and they moved in temporarily, I welcomed them with open arms. I had no idea she would one day stand in my living room surrounded by her friends and scream those words that still echo in my mind. This is not your house. Let me know where you are watching from in the comments below, and subscribe to hear how I took back my power and discovered something shocking about my daughter-in-law. The house on Maple Street had been my sanctuary for 4 decades. My husband Robert and I purchased it when we were just starting out, excited to build our life together. It was a 4-bedroom colonial, with white siding, black shutters, and a wraparound porch, where we would sit on summer evenings watching the fireflies dance across our front lawn. The backyard was my pride and joy, with flower beds I had tenderly cultivated over the years, each plant representing a memory or a milestone in our lives. When Robert passed away 5 years ago from a heart attack, the house became even more precious to me. It held every memory we had created together, from bringing our son James home from the hospital to celebrating his college graduation on that same wraparound porch. Robert had been careful with our finances, making sure the mortgage was paid off before his retirement. He wanted me to be secure, to never worry about having a roof over my head. He would tell me, "Deirdre, this house is your forever home. No one can take it from you." In those first months after losing him, I would walk from room to room, touching his things, smelling his old sweaters, and finding comfort in the home we had built together. The neighbors checked on me, regularly bringing casseroles and offering companionship, but it was the house itself that helped me heal. Each creaking floorboard and sun-dappled corner held pieces of Robert, allowing me to feel his presence, even as I learned to live without him. James was my only child, born after several heartbreaking miscarriages. Perhaps that was why I had always been protective of him, why our bond felt so special. He grew up to be a kind man, intelligent and caring, though sometimes too eager to please others. After college, he found success as a software engineer at a tech company downtown, and I couldn't have been prouder. When Robert died, James was my rock. He called daily, came over for Sunday dinners, and helped me navigate the confusing paperwork that follows a death. We grew even closer during that time, finding comfort in our shared grief and memories. I supported him through college financially, working extra nursing shifts to ensure he graduated debt-free. Later, when he was starting his career, I was there with encouragement and home-cooked meals during the stressful times. We had the kind of relationship I had always hoped for with my adult son. The day James brought Amanda to Sunday dinner, I was immediately struck by her confidence. She was 32 with a marketing job at a luxury retail company, stylishly dressed and articulate. James seemed completely smitten watching her, with adoring eyes as she charmed me with questions about my nursing career and compliments on my home cooking. "Your house has such character, Deirdre," she said, looking around my dining room with appraising eyes. "They just don't build them like this anymore." I was pleased that James had found someone who seemed to make him happy, though there were moments when I noticed her checking the brand labels on my kitchen appliances or making subtle comments about how the house could use some updating. I brushed these observations aside. My son was happy, and that was what mattered most. Their engagement came just 6 months after they started dating. It seemed quick to me, but James assured me they were perfect for each other. I noticed how Amanda often spoke for both of them, how James deferred to her opinions more often than not, but I told myself this was simply the dynamic of their relationship. Who was I to judge? Every couple finds their own balance. I threw myself into helping plan their wedding, contributing a significant portion of my savings to give them the celebration they wanted. Amanda had expensive taste, selecting a venue that cost more than my entire wedding to Robert had, but I wanted to support their happiness. The wedding was beautiful, if a bit more extravagant than I would have chosen, with Amanda as the perfect bride in a designer gown and James beaming at her side. After their honeymoon in the Maldives, I noticed that James called less frequently. When we did speak, Amanda was often in the background, sometimes interrupting to ask him to help with something or reminding him of plans they had. I tried not to take it personally. Newlyweds deserve their privacy, their time to build a life together, without a mother-in-law hovering nearby. I made efforts to build a relationship with Amanda, inviting them to dinner, sending thoughtful gifts for her birthday, and asking about her work and interests. Sometimes she was warm and engaging, other times distracted and dismissive. I reminded myself that relationships take time to develop, and I was patient, believing we would eventually find our footing as family. The call came on a Tuesday evening as I was preparing for my book club meeting. James sounded hesitant, his voice lacking its usual confidence. "Mom, I need to ask a huge favor," he began. "Amanda lost her job last week. The company is downsizing, and her department was eliminated." "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that," I replied, genuinely concerned. "Is there anything I can do to help?" There was a pause before he continued. "Well, that's actually why I'm calling. Our lease is up at the end of the month, and with Amanda's income gone, we can't afford to renew. We were wondering if we could stay with you temporarily while we save for a down payment on our own place." My heart gave a little jump at the thought of having James back home. Yet there was also a flicker of hesitation. Amanda and I had a cordial relationship, but living together would be different than occasional dinners and holiday gatherings. "How long do you think you would need to stay?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Just 3 or 4 months," James assured me quickly. "Amanda already has some promising job leads, and we've been saving for a house anyway. This will just speed up the process." I agreed without further questions. After all, what kind of mother would I be if I didn't help my son when he needed me? The house had felt too quiet since Robert passed anyway. Perhaps having young energy around would be good for all of us. In the days before their arrival, I prepared with excitement and a touch of anxiety. I cleared out the guest bedroom, putting fresh linens on the bed and emptying drawers for their clothing. I stocked the pantry with James's favorite snacks and planned welcome home meals. Part of me hoped this temporary arrangement might bring us closer, giving Amanda and me the opportunity to develop the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationship I had always wanted. When they arrived with a moving truck full of belongings, I was surprised by how much they had brought for a temporary stay. Amanda explained they had put most things in storage, but needed their essentials. These essentials seemed to include multiple large-screen televisions, an elaborate coffee system that took up half my counter space, and enough clothing to fill not just the guest room closet, but part of the hall closet as well. The first week went smoothly enough. Amanda was polite, thanking me for meals and asking permission before using the washing machine. James seemed happy to be back in his childhood home, pointing out to Amanda the marks on the wall where we had measured his height each year and showing her his old bedroom now converted to my sewing room. But subtle changes began almost immediately. I came downstairs one morning to find my living room furniture rearranged. The sofa that had always faced the fireplace now faced the wall where Amanda had mounted their television. "Hope you don't mind," she said when she noticed my surprise. "This layout makes much more sense for watching TV, and it actually makes the room look bigger." Before I could respond, she added, "This house has such potential, but it's so outdated. You should see what they're doing with these older colonials on HGTV. A few changes could really increase the property value." I nodded and said nothing, not wanting to start our cohabitation with conflict. It was just furniture. It could be moved back later. But the changes continued. My collection of family photos that had lined the hallway were deemed cluttered and relocated to a single small table in the corner. The handmade quilts I kept in the living room, including one Robert's mother had made for our wedding, were put away because they didn't match Amanda's aesthetic. James worked long hours, often not returning home until after dinner. When I tried to mention some of Amanda's changes, he would listen distractedly before saying something like, "Amanda has a great eye for design, Mom. Just give her ideas a chance. I think the house looks more modern now." One evening, about 3 weeks into their stay, I came home from my volunteer shift at the hospital to find Amanda had invited several friends over. They were having wine in my living room, sitting on new throw pillows that had replaced my old ones, music playing from a speaker that now occupied the shelf where I had kept Robert's record collection. Deirdre, Amanda called when she saw me. "Come meet my friends." I was just giving them a tour of the house. As I greeted them politely, one of the women said, "Amanda was just telling us about all the renovations you're planning. The open concept kitchen will be amazing." I blinked in confusion. Open concept kitchen. Amanda laughed lightly. Just ideas for the future. Deirdre likes to keep things traditional, but we're working on her, aren't we? Her friends laughed, and I managed a tight smile, feeling suddenly like a guest in my own home. That night, I heard them talking late into the evening, Amanda's voice rising occasionally, with phrases like, "so stuck in the past and could be worth so much more with updates." I retreated to my bedroom earlier than usual, feeling a growing discomfort I couldn't quite name. This was just temporary, I reminded myself. Just until they saved enough for their own place. 3 months passed, and the temporary arrangement showed no signs of ending. My home had transformed gradually but unmistakably. The walls in the living room and dining room, once a warm cream color that Robert and I had selected together, were now painted a stark white that Amanda called modern farmhouse. My antique dining table had been replaced with a glass and metal one that Amanda found at a furniture outlet. When I asked about my table, she casually mentioned it was safely stored in the garage because it was too bulky for the space. Most painful was the day I discovered she had packed away most of my family photos, including my favorite picture of Robert and me on our 30th anniversary. When I found the boxes in the attic labeled Deirdre's old stuff, I felt a physical ache in my chest. Those old silver frames were collecting dust and making the place look cluttered, Amanda explained when I confronted her. I thought it would be easier for you if I just packed them away properly. You can still look at them whenever you want. But it wasn't just about looking at them. It was about walking past the images of my life each day, being surrounded by the visual reminders of the family and memories I cherished. Now the walls displayed abstract prints Amanda had ordered online, and a few artfully filtered photos of her and James on their wedding day. Common areas in the house no longer felt like mine. Amanda had rearranged the kitchen so thoroughly that I couldn't find my own cooking utensils without opening multiple drawers. She complained that my cast-iron pans were too heavy and bought non-stick cookware that she forbade me to use with metal utensils. My collection of cookbooks, many with handwritten notes from decades of use, were relegated to a box in the pantry because they were cluttering the counter. I found myself retreating to my bedroom more and more, the only space that remained truly mine. I would sit in the armchair by the window looking out at my garden, which was also suffering from neglect, as I no longer felt comfortable spending long periods in the yard with Amanda constantly suggesting improvements to my plantings. When friends invited me to lunch or community events, I accepted more often than before, grateful for hours away from the tension at home. My friend Sylvia noticed the change in me during our weekly coffee meetup. "You don't seem yourself lately, Deirdre," she said, concern evident in her voice. "Is everything okay with James and Amanda living with you?" I hesitated, not wanting to speak poorly of my son's wife. "It's an adjustment," I finally admitted. "The house feels different with them there." "Different how?" Sylvia pressed. "Everything is changing so quickly. Sometimes I barely recognize my own home." To my embarrassment, tears filled my eyes. "I sound like a selfish old woman, don't I? They need a place to stay and I have the room. I should be grateful for the company." Sylvia reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Having boundaries doesn't make you selfish, Deirdre. It's still your house." But it was becoming less my house, with each passing day. I began to feel like I was walking on eggshells, careful not to leave anything out of place, or use too many dishes when cooking for myself. The peaceful routine I had established after Robert's death had been completely disrupted, replaced by a constant anxiety about what might be changed or removed next. I tried several times to speak with James privately about how I was feeling, but he was always rushing out the door to work or too tired when he came home. On the rare occasions I managed to express some of my concerns, he would nod distractedly. "It's just different generations, Mom," he would say. "Amanda has more modern ideas about design and living spaces. But we're still looking for our own place. It won't be much longer." But as the 6-month mark of their temporary stay approached, I began to suspect they weren't actively house hunting at all. One afternoon, I overheard Amanda on the phone with a friend. "Living with James's mom is saving us so much money," she said with a laugh. "Why rush to take on a mortgage when we have a free place to stay? Besides, this house has serious potential if we can just convince her to update it. The location alone makes it worth a fortune." My suspicions were confirmed when I casually asked James about their timeline for moving out during a rare moment alone with him. He shifted uncomfortably and avoided my eyes. "The housing market is really competitive right now," he said. "We're looking, but we haven't found the right place yet. Amanda has specific requirements." I nodded, not pushing further, but a heaviness settled in my stomach. That same week, I overheard one of Amanda's friends refer to Amanda and James's house while they were having lunch on my patio. Amanda didn't correct her. The final straw of this period came when I went to work in my garden and discovered my old but well-maintained gardening tools had been replaced with brand new ones. My worn leather gloves, a gift from Robert on our last anniversary before his death, were nowhere to be found. When I asked Amanda about them, she looked surprised at my upset. "Those old things were falling apart," she said. "I threw them out and got you new ones. You should be thanking me." I couldn't find the words to explain that the worn spots on those gloves were shaped to my hands, that the dirt ingrained in the leather told the story of years tending the garden Robert and I had planted together. Instead, I nodded stiffly and went back inside, my heart breaking for all the small pieces of my life that were being discarded without my permission. The first major confrontation happened on a Sunday evening 6 months into their stay. I had planned to make my traditional pot roast, a recipe passed down from my grandmother that James had always loved growing up. When I entered the kitchen, I found Amanda unpacking boxes of shiny new cookware. "What's all this?" I asked, noticing my well-seasoned Dutch oven and other cooking equipment piled in a box on the floor. "We needed to upgrade the kitchen supplies," Amanda replied, without looking up. "These non-toxic, eco-friendly pots are much healthier than those old things you were using. Did you know that vintage cookware can leach all kinds of chemicals into food?" I felt heat rising to my face. That Dutch oven was my mother's and hers before that. I've been making our family recipes in it for 40 years without poisoning anyone. Amanda rolled her eyes slightly. "Well, cooking methods have evolved since then. I've read all about it on my wellness blogs. These new pans are much safer." "I was planning to make pot roast tonight," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "James has always loved it." "Oh, we're trying to cut back on red meat," Amanda replied dismissively. "I was going to make a quinoa bowl with roasted vegetables, much healthier." When James came home, I tried to explain how hurt I felt about my cookware being replaced without discussion, especially pieces with family history. "Mom," he said with a sigh, "Amanda is just trying to modernize things a bit. Those old pots and pans were pretty ancient. They're family heirlooms, James. They have memories and history attached to them." Amanda interjected. "We can't base our health decisions on sentimentality, Deirdre. James and I are focused on longevity and wellness now." The conversation ended with my Dutch oven and other beloved cooking items. Remaining in the box, and dinner that night was indeed quinoa and vegetables, which James praised effusively while avoiding my eyes. After that incident, Amanda's behavior toward me grew increasingly cold and dismissive. She would make plans for renovations and discuss them openly with James and her friends without consulting me. When I would enter a room where they were talking, conversations would abruptly shift or stop altogether. "This wall would be perfect for a built-in entertainment center," she might say, as I walked through the living room. "What about my bookshelf?" I would ask, referring to the cherry wood shelves Robert had built. "Oh, that old thing could go to Goodwill. No one has physical books anymore, Deirdre. Everything's digital now." Comments about my clutter and outdated taste became daily occurrences. Amanda began referring to my treasured possessions as all this old stuff when her friends visited. More painfully, she started making subtle suggestions that perhaps I would be happier in a different living situation. My friend's mother just moved into that new retirement community on Oak Ridge Drive, she mentioned casually over breakfast one morning. She says it's so freeing not to worry about maintaining a big house anymore. All those activities and people her own age. You might want to look into it, Deirdre. I nearly choked on my tea. I'm perfectly capable of maintaining my home and I have no interest in moving. Amanda shrugged. Just something to think about for the future. This house is really too big for just one person anyway. The stress began affecting my health. I had trouble sleeping, often lying awake, listening to Amanda and James, talking downstairs, wondering what part of my home would be transformed next. My blood pressure, usually well controlled, began to rise, concerning my doctor during my regular checkup. "Any new stressors in your life, Deirdre?" she asked, frowning at my numbers. I hesitated before admitting my son and his wife moved in temporarily 7 months ago. "It's been challenging." She nodded sympathetically. "Family dynamics can be stressful, especially when living arrangements change. But you need to prioritize your health. Chronic stress can have serious consequences at our age." My friend Sylvia noticed the changes in me too. Always perceptive, she commented on my weight loss and the dark circles under my eyes during our weekly coffee date. "You're fading away, Deirdre," she said bluntly. "What's really going on in that house?" Finally, the dam broke, and I told her everything. The gradual takeover of my home, the dismissal of my preferences, the subtle and not so subtle suggestions that I should move out the way. James never took my side. "I feel like I'm disappearing in my own home," I confessed, tears streaming down my face. "Like I'm just an inconvenient ghost they have to tolerate until they can take over completely." Sylvia listened, her expression growing increasingly outraged. When I finished, she leaned forward and spoke firmly. "Deirdre Hamilton, you listen to me. That is your house. Your name is on the deed. You and Robert worked for decades to pay it off. You have every right to be comfortable and respected in your own home. But James is my son. I don't want to cause problems in his marriage. James is allowing his wife to bully his mother. That's the problem in his marriage, not you standing up for yourself." Sylvia's eyes were fierce with protective anger. "It's time to set some boundaries before you have nothing left, including your health." The Christmas incident proved Sylvia right. For 40 years, I had decorated my home for the holidays with treasured ornaments and decorations, many handmade by Robert, who had enjoyed woodworking. That December, I came home from a doctor's appointment to find Amanda supervising 2 young men who were bringing in bags from an upscale home goods store. "What's all this?" I asked, though I already had a sinking feeling. "Christmas decorations," Amanda said brightly. "I thought we'd go with a silver and blue theme this year. Much more elegant than those crafty decorations you usually put up." "But we always use the traditional decorations," I protested. "The angel for the tree was my mother's. The advent calendar was hand-painted by Robert." Amanda's smile tightened. "We thought it was time for something more contemporary. Besides, I already packed away all the old decorations to make room for these." When I went to the attic, I found my carefully labeled boxes of Christmas memories had been shoved into a corner, some stacked so haphazardly that I feared for the delicate ornaments inside. I stood there among the dust and shadows, clutching the box with my mother's angel, and felt a profound sense of loss wash over me. The Christmas dinner was the final humiliation of that period. Amanda invited her parents, her sister, and several friends, but conspicuously excluded my brother and his wife, who traditionally spent the holiday with me. When I asked about inviting them, Amanda claimed there wouldn't be enough room at the table. "We can make room," I insisted. "We've had larger gatherings before." "I've already planned the seating and the menu," Amanda said firmly. "Maybe your brother can come another time." During the dinner, I sat at the end of my own table, barely included in conversations, watching Amanda hold court as if she were the lady of the house. My traditional recipes were nowhere to be found, replaced by catered dishes Amanda had ordered. When her mother complimented the beautiful home, Amanda accepted the praise without acknowledging me at all. "We have big plans for renovations next year," she said, exchanging a look with James. "This place has good bones, but it needs a modern touch." I felt like a stranger at my own Christmas table. Invisible except when Amanda introduced me, almost as an afterthought. "And of course, this is James's mother, Deirdre." Not the homeowner, not the host, just James's mother, a peripheral character in what had become Amanda's show. That night alone in my room, while the sounds of laughter continued downstairs, I cried for the first time since Robert's funeral. Something had to change, but I felt powerless to make it happen. January brought Amanda's 33rd birthday, and with it the breaking point of our strained living situation. For weeks, she had been planning what she called a small gathering at the house. I soon discovered her definition of small was very different from mine. "Just a few close friends," she told James. But the guest list I glimpsed on her phone showed nearly 50 names. I tried to raise concerns about the size of the party, but Amanda dismissed them immediately. The house can easily accommodate 50 people, Deirdre. We'll move some furniture to create more space. But the neighbors might complain about parking and noise, I pointed out. The Johnsons next door have a new baby, and the Wilsons across the street both work early shifts. Amanda's smile was tight. I've already thought of all that. People can park at the shopping center 2 blocks away and walk, and we'll keep the noise reasonable. 2 days before the party, Amanda approached me with what felt like a practice speech. Deirdre, about my birthday celebration this weekend. James and I were thinking it might be more comfortable for everyone if you made other plans that evening. I stared at her, not comprehending at first. You want me to leave my own house during the party? She nodded, her expression falsely sympathetic. I know these gatherings can be overwhelming at your age. All those young people, the music, the late hours. We thought you might prefer to have a quiet evening elsewhere. Maybe you could visit Sylvia. The implication that I was too old to handle a party in my own home stung sharply. I think I can manage to be present at a gathering in my own house, Amanda. Her pleasant expression faltered slightly. Well, it's just that some of my colleagues from my new job will be there, including my boss. I'm trying to make a good impression, and it would be easier if the old lady wasn't shuffling around getting in the way. I finished for her. That's not what I meant, she said quickly, though. Her eyes said otherwise. Just consider it okay. If you do stay, maybe you could just keep to your room after greeting everyone. It would make things simpler. I was still processing this conversation when later that day I overheard Amanda on the phone in the kitchen. Pausing in the hallway, I listened as she discussed renovation plans with someone. The second bedroom upstairs would make a perfect home office, she was saying. It gets great natural light, and there's enough space for both our desks. No, that's not James's mother's room. She's in the master. Well, eventually we'll need to figure that out. The old lady needs to move on at some point. This house is wasted on just her, and property values in this neighborhood are skyrocketing. A cold wave of shock washed over me. They weren't just planning to stay temporarily. Amanda was making long-term plans for my house, plans that apparently included me vacating the premises eventually. The day of the party arrived, and despite Amanda's suggestions, I had no intention of leaving or hiding in my room. I dressed carefully in a blue dress. Robert had always loved applied light makeup and styled my silver hair. If I was going to be present at this gathering in my own home, I would do so with dignity. The house filled quickly with Amanda's friends and colleagues, most in their 30s and 40s, dressed fashionably and speaking loudly over the music Amanda had chosen. James greeted me briefly, before being pulled away by his wife to meet her new boss. I circulated quietly, introducing myself as the homeowner, when Amanda failed to do so, which was most of the time. I had retreated to a corner of the living room when I heard a crash from the dining room, followed by Amanda's sharp exclamation. Moving quickly toward the sound, I entered the room to find a young man apologizing profusely as Amanda knelt, picking up pieces of broken crystal. With a sinking heart, I recognized the shattered remains of my mother's crystal bowl, a wedding gift she had received from her own mother, passed down to me when Robert and I married. It had survived 40 years in my care, only to be broken at this party where I wasn't even wanted. It's fine, Jason, accidents happen, Amanda was saying, though her tone was irritated. It was just an old bowl anyway. That old bowl was a family heirloom, I said quietly from the doorway. It belonged to my mother and her mother before her. The room fell silent as heads turned toward me. Amanda's expression flickered between embarrassment and annoyance before settling into a tight smile. Deirdre, we didn't see you there. Don't worry about the bowl. We can find a replacement on eBay or something. It's irreplaceable, I said, my voice stronger now, as decades of patience finally gave way to honest anger, just like so many other things that have been changed, packed away, or discarded since you moved in. Amanda's face flushed as she stood clutching pieces of the broken crystal. This isn't the time, Deirdre. We have guests. Yes, there are guests in my home. Guests I wasn't consulted about inviting at a party I was asked to hide from, where family heirlooms are being broken and dismissed as unimportant. I could see James moving toward us through the crowd, his expression concerned. Amanda's embarrassment was quickly transforming into anger, her cheeks flushed and eyes hard. You're making a scene, she hissed. We can discuss this later. No, I don't think we can. For 8 months, I've watched you take over my home piece by piece. I've been patient, understanding, and accommodating while you've rearranged, replaced, and removed the things that matter to me. I've listened to you plan renovations to a house that isn't yours, and suggest I should move to a retirement home. I've reached my limit, Amanda. The room was utterly silent now. The music, the only sound as everyone watched our confrontation with uncomfortable fascination. James reached us, putting a hand on Amanda's shoulder. Mom, maybe we should talk privately, he suggested, his voice tight. But Amanda had reached her breaking point too. Her face contorted with rage as she suddenly threw the pieces of crystal she was holding onto the floor, where they shattered further. You ungrateful old woman, she shouted, making me flinch at the venom in her voice. We've been improving this outdated house, making it livable, and all you do is complain about your precious junk and how things used to be. James tried to intervene. Amanda, please, not like this. But she was beyond listening. Months of pretense stripped away by anger and public embarrassment. She stepped toward me, her finger pointing accusingly at my chest. This isn't your house anymore, she screamed, her voice echoing in the stunned silence. You're just too selfish and stuck in the past to see that it's our turn now. Our turn to live here, to make it what it should be. You're just in the way. The room seemed to spin around me as her words hung in the air. My son stood frozen, his mouth open, but no words coming out. No defense of his mother forthcoming. Amanda's chest heaved with angry breaths, as she glared at me, seemingly unaware or uncaring of the shocked expressions of her guests. In that moment, looking at my son's failure to speak up and the naked hostility on Amanda's face, I realized with perfect clarity that I had lost my son to this woman. The sweet boy I had raised was gone, replaced by a man who would stand silently while his wife abused his mother in her own home. Without another word, I turned and walked upstairs to my bedroom. With shaking hands, I packed an overnight bag called Sylvia and then walked back downstairs and out the front door. No one tried to stop me. In fact, as I passed through the living room, conversations had already resumed, though in hushed, excited tones, the party now fueled by the drama they had witnessed. James was waiting by the front door, his expression a mix of embarrassment and concern. Mom, don't leave. Amanda didn't mean what she said. She's had a few drinks and got emotional. I looked at my son, this man I had raised with love and sacrifice, and felt a deep sadness. Yes, she did mean it, James. She's meant it for months. The only difference is that tonight she said it out loud in front of witnesses. I adjusted my purse on my shoulder. I'll be at Sylvia's tonight. We can talk tomorrow, when your wife is sober, and I've had time to think. As I walked down the front path, I heard the music volume increase behind me. The party was continuing my departure, barely a hiccup in the evening's festivities. I got into my car, hands still trembling, and drove the short distance to Sylvia's house, where she was waiting on the porch, having heard the distress in my voice during our brief phone call. That night, curled under a blanket on Sylvia's guest bed, I cried for everything I had lost. My beloved husband, my relationship with my son, the security and peace of my home, and most painfully my own self-respect, which I had sacrificed piece by piece in the name of keeping peace. The next morning, James called full of apologies. Amanda was sorry too, he insisted. She had been drinking and got carried away. The stress of her new job, the cramped living situation, the pressure of the party, it had all built up. She didn't mean what she said, Mom. You know that, right? What part didn't she mean, James? I asked quietly. The part where she said the house isn't mine anymore, or the part where she said I'm in the way? None of it, he insisted. She was just upset about the bowl. The bowl was a symptom, not the cause, I replied. I think Amanda was finally honest last night. For the first time since you moved in, she said what she's really been thinking. She wants to apologize in person, James pressed. Will you come home today? Home. The word hung between us. Was it still my home? Had it been truly these past 8 months? I'll come back to the house this afternoon, I said carefully. But first I have an appointment to keep. That appointment was with Harold Greenberg, a lawyer who had been Robert's close friend for 30 years. He listened with growing concern as I described the situation occasionally, making notes or asking clarifying questions. "Let me be absolutely clear," he said when I finished. "The house is solely in your name, correct?" "Yes." Robert left everything to me. "And there was never any formal rental agreement with James and Amanda? No contract specifying terms of their stay?" "No, nothing like that. It was supposed to be temporary." Harold nodded, his expression grave but determined. "Deirdre, I want to be direct with you. What you're describing is a systematic attempt to take over your property and push you out of your own home. Your daughter-in-law has shown her true intentions, and I'm concerned that your son is either complicit or unwilling to stand up to her." His words, though painful, confirmed what I had already begun to realize. "What are my options?" I asked. "As the sole owner of the property, you have every legal right to determine who lives there. You can give them notice to vacate, typically 30 days in this state. If they refuse to leave, we can pursue formal eviction proceedings, though I hope it wouldn't come to that." I flinched at the word eviction. The idea of legally evicting my own son felt like a nightmare. "Is there another way? Something less adversarial?" Harold thought for a moment. "There might be. Let me ask you a question you might not have considered. Have you ever thought about selling the house?" The idea of selling my beloved home had never seriously crossed my mind before Harold mentioned it. For 40 years, it had been my sanctuary, the place where my happiest memories lived. But as I drove back to the house that afternoon, I found myself seeing it with new eyes. The white colonial with black shutters was still beautiful, still filled with memories. But it was also becoming a battleground, a source of constant stress and conflict. Perhaps I thought as I parked in the driveway it was time to consider whether holding on to the physical house was worth the emotional toll it was taking. Inside, James and Amanda were waiting in the living room. Amanda looked subdued, her eyes downcast as I entered. James jumped up immediately. "Mom, we're so glad you're back. Amanda has something she wants to say." Amanda raised her eyes to mine, and I was struck by the lack of genuine remorse in them, despite her carefully composed expression. "Deirdre, I want to apologize for my behavior last night. I had too much to drink, and I said things I didn't mean. Of course, this is your house, and James and I are grateful you've allowed us to stay here." The words were right, but the tone was perfunctory. This was an apology designed to smooth things over, not a genuine acknowledgement of wrongdoing. "Thank you for apologizing, Amanda," I replied evenly. "But I think last night brought some important issues to the surface that we need to address." James looked relieved at my calm response. "Absolutely, Mom. We want to make this work better for everyone." I took a deep breath. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I've made some decisions. I need to know your honest plans. How much longer do you anticipate staying here?" They exchanged a quick glance before James answered. "Well, we're still saving for a down payment. The housing market is really competitive right now." "So, no specific timeline then?" "It's hard to say exactly," he hedged. "Maybe another 6 months, possibly a year." I nodded, my suspicions confirmed. "I see. And in the meantime, what are your expectations about the house? Amanda, you've mentioned renovations several times." Amanda shifted uncomfortably. "Just ideas for improvements, nothing major." "Like converting my bedroom into a home office?" I asked quietly. Her eyes widened slightly. "You heard that I was just thinking out loud. Obviously, we wouldn't do anything like that without discussing it with you first." But we both knew that wasn't true. She had been making changes without discussing them with me for months. "I've come to a decision," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. "I'm going to sell the house." The shock on their faces would have been comical under different circumstances. "Sell the house," James repeated incredulously. "But Mom, you love this house. You and Dad built your life here." "Yes, we did. And those memories will always be precious to me. But the house itself has become a source of conflict and unhappiness. I think it's time for me to move somewhere new, somewhere that can be truly mine again." Amanda had gone very still, her expression calculating. "Where would you go?" she asked carefully. "I've been looking at condominium communities," I replied the plan, forming more concretely as I spoke. There's a lovely development near the river with units that have amazing views. No yard to maintain good security and a community of people my age. But what about us? Amanda blurted out, dropping all pretense of concern for my welfare. You'll need to find your own place, of course. The money you've been saving by living here rent-free should help with that. James looked panicked now. Mom, please don't make any hasty decisions. We can work this out. Amanda and I will be more respectful of your space and belongings. My mind is made up, I said firmly. I've already spoken with a realtor who thinks the house will sell quickly in this market. She's coming tomorrow to take pictures and list it. This was a slight exaggeration. I had only called the realtor Harold, recommended to set up an appointment. But I could see from their expressions that my decisive action had caught them completely off guard. Amanda's facade of contrition vanished. You can't just decide this without consulting us. We live here too. As guests in my home, I reminded her quietly. A home that is legally and solely mine to do with as I choose. This is ridiculous, she snapped, standing up abruptly. James, talk to your mother. Make her understand how disruptive this would be for us right now. But James was looking at me with dawning comprehension, perhaps finally understanding how serious the situation had become. Mom, can we at least discuss this further? Maybe look at other options. We can talk more tomorrow, I conceded, but my decision to sell is final. Over the next few days, I moved forward with my plan with a determination that surprised even me. The realtor Jennifer was enthusiastic about the house's prospects. The location is prime and colonial homes with this much character are in high demand, she assured me after walking through. Even without updates, I think we could sell quickly for well above what you might expect. We set a listing price that made my head spin nearly 4 times what Robert and I had paid 40 years ago. Jennifer arranged for professional photographs and created a listing that went live just 5 days after my confrontation with Amanda. During those 5 days, James made several attempts to change my mind, alternating between emotional appeals about family history and practical concerns about moving so quickly. Amanda, however, shifted tactics entirely. When persuasion failed, she turned to threats. You realize we could contest this, she said during one particularly tense dinner. We've been living here for 9 months. We have established residency. We could tie this up in court for years. You could try, I replied calmly, thankful for Harold's legal coaching. But since there's no lease agreement and no rent has ever been paid, you're legally classified as guests, not tenants. Also, the house is solely in my name. Harold Greenberg has assured me my position is quite secure. The mention of Robert's lawyer friend silenced her temporarily, though the hostility in her eyes remained. What none of us expected was how quickly the house would sell. Jennifer hosted one open house on a Saturday, and by Sunday evening, we had 7 offers, all above asking price. The winning bid was from a couple with a cash offer who could close in 3 weeks and were willing to let me set the move-out date that worked for me. When I announced this news to James and Amanda, her reaction was explosive. 3 weeks? That's impossible. We can't find a place that quickly. You're doing this deliberately to punish me. I'm selling my house because I want to move on to the next chapter of my life, I corrected her. And I've negotiated to stay up to 60 days after closing if needed, which gives us all plenty of time to find new living arrangements. This is all because of one argument at my birthday, she fumed. One mistake and you're throwing us out on the street. This isn't about one argument, Amanda. It's about 9 months of feeling increasingly unwelcome and disrespected in my own home. The argument just made your true feelings clear. James, who had been quietly processing the reality of the situation, finally spoke up. Where exactly are you planning to move, Mom? I've put a deposit on a condominium at Riverside Point, I told him. It's a corner unit on the 4th floor with a view of the river and the city skyline. 2 bedrooms, so there's space for guests. A lovely kitchen and a balcony for container gardening. As I described the place, I felt a surprising surge of excitement. The condo was beautiful, modern, yet warm, with none of the maintenance headaches of an older home. The community had walking paths along the river, a clubhouse with activities and security that would allow me to travel without worries. You've already put a deposit down. Amanda's voice rose incredulously. When were you planning to tell us? I'm telling you now, I replied simply. The timing worked out perfectly. I can move in next month, which gives us all time to pack and make arrangements. In the days that followed, I watched as the dynamic between James and Amanda shifted. As the reality of having to find and pay for their own housing sank in, tensions between them became increasingly visible. I would overhear snippets of heated conversations cut short when I entered a room. You said she would eventually. Amanda's angry whisper. I never promised. James's defensive response. Wasted 9 months we could have been. Her recrimination. One afternoon, while sorting through items in the attic, I came across a folder I didn't recognize in a box of household documents. Opening it, I discovered something that made my blood run cold: draft paperwork for transferring ownership of my house, with blank spaces where my signature would go. Further digging revealed printed emails between Amanda and a real estate lawyer discussing ways to help an elderly parent transition ownership of property to family members. There were also notes about cognitive assessment and competency concerns in Amanda's handwriting. The implications were clear and horrifying. Amanda hadn't just been planning to stay in my house indefinitely, she had been actively plotting to gain ownership of it, possibly by trying to have me declared incompetent. When I showed these documents to Harold, his face darkened with anger. This is extremely concerning, Deirdre. These notes suggest a premeditated plan to potentially defraud you of your property. Should I confront them? I asked, still shaken by the discovery. Harold thought carefully before responding. At this point, with the house sale underway and your new living arrangements secured, I'm not sure what would be gained by direct confrontation. However, I would strongly advise keeping these documents secure and being extremely cautious about signing anything either of them presents to you. I took his advice, making copies of everything and storing the originals in a safe deposit box at my bank. I said nothing to James or Amanda about my discovery, but I began paying closer attention to their conversations and behaviors. A few days later, I overheard Amanda on the phone with someone, her voice tense and frustrated. It's all falling apart, she was saying. She's selling the house from under us, and property values in this neighborhood have nearly doubled since we started this plan. We're losing a fortune. No, James couldn't convince her. I know what we discussed, but she brought in a lawyer friend of her late husband's. Yes, that complicates things considerably. The conversation confirmed my worst suspicions. What I had interpreted as entitled behavior and lack of boundaries was actually something far more calculated. Amanda had targeted my home from the beginning, seeing it as an asset to acquire, rather than a place where her husband's mother lived and belonged. As the closing date approached, James became increasingly subdued, while Amanda alternated between cold fury and desperate attempts to delay the sale. She suggested I was making a mistake, that I would regret leaving a house with so many memories, that the condo community might not be what I expected. When these tactics failed, she made one last desperate attempt, approaching me in the kitchen with a different angle. Deirdre, James and I have been talking. What if we bought the house from you? You could use the money for your condo, and we could keep the house in the family. For a brief moment, I considered it. It would be a way to preserve the house's connection to our family history, to know that the home Robert and I had loved would stay with our son. That's an interesting proposition, I said carefully. What price were you thinking of? Amanda named a figure nearly $100,000 below what my buyers were paying. It's a fair price considering you wouldn't have to pay a realtor's commission with a private sale. I almost laughed at the audacity. Amanda, I already have a signed contract with buyers who are paying significantly more than that. And after what I've discovered about your plans for me in this house, I wouldn't sell it to you if you offered twice the current price. Her face paled. What do you mean? What plans? The documents I found in the attic. The ones about transferring property from an elderly parent and assessing my competency. I kept my voice steady, despite the anger I felt. Did you really think I would never find them? She stammered some denial, but her expression confirmed everything. When James came home that evening, their argument behind their closed bedroom door was loud enough for me to hear portions, including Amanda's bitter accusation, Your mother was never supposed to find those papers." The next morning, James approached me alone, his face haggard from what had clearly been a sleepless night. "Mom, about those papers Amanda had. It wasn't what you think." "It was exactly what I think, James. She was planning to take my house, possibly, by trying to have me declared incompetent." He couldn't meet my eyes. "She said it was just research, just exploring options for the future, for when you might need more care." "I'm 68, and in good health, James. The only care I needed was respect in my own home." I studied my son's face, this man I had raised and loved. "Did you know about her plans?" His hesitation before answering told me everything. "Not all of it," he finally admitted. "She said we should think about the future, about securing the house eventually." I never thought she meant what those papers suggested. In that moment, I felt both profound disappointment in my son and strange relief. The clarity of seeing the situation and the people involved for what they truly were was oddly freeing. "The house closes in 2 weeks," I said simply. "I hope you and Amanda have found a place to live by then." The sale of my house closed smoothly, putting a sum in my bank account that still seemed unreal to me. The day after signing the final paperwork, I began moving my belongings to my new condominium. I had decided to take only what truly mattered to me, the pieces with emotional significance or practical use, leaving behind furniture and items that carried too many conflicting feelings now. My new home at Riverside Point was everything I had hoped for. The corner unit on the 4th floor offered breathtaking views of the river and city skyline. Floor-to-ceiling windows filled the space with natural light, and the open floor plan felt both spacious and cozy. The modern kitchen gleamed with new appliances, and the master bathroom featured a walk-in shower with a built-in bench, perfect for aging in place. Most surprising was how quickly it felt like home. I had worried that leaving the house where Robert and I had built our life together would feel like leaving him behind too. But as I arranged our wedding photo on my new bedside table and hung the quilt his mother made us on the wall of my new living room, I felt his presence just as strongly here. "You would have liked this place, Robert," I said aloud on my first night there, standing on the balcony, watching the sunset reflect off the river. "It's a fresh start, but I've brought you with me." James and Amanda found an apartment across town, their relationship clearly strained by the events of the past few weeks. The day they moved out of my old house, James came alone to say goodbye. Standing awkwardly in my half-packed living room, he seemed unsure what to say. "I'm sorry, Mom," he finally offered. "For everything. For not seeing what was happening, for not standing up for you, for letting things get so bad." "I'm sorry too," I replied honestly. "Sorry that it took such a drastic step to open our eyes to what was happening. Amanda and I are working through some things," he said hesitantly. "Her behavior with the house, the documents you found. It showed me sides of her I hadn't seen before. Or maybe didn't want to see." I nodded unsurprised. People reveal their true character during times of stress and conflict. That's true for all of us. "Will you be okay here alone?" he asked, looking around at the boxes and partially dismantled furniture. "I won't be alone. Sylvia is coming to help me finish packing, and I've hired movers for the heavy lifting. My new place is wonderful, and I'm looking forward to this next chapter." He nodded, looking both relieved and sad. Would it be okay if I visited you there sometime?" I'd like that, I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it despite everything. "But James, things need to be different moving forward. I need to know you respect my boundaries and my decisions." "I understand," he said quietly. "I want to do better. Be better." In the months that followed, James and I began the slow process of rebuilding our relationship. He would visit me at my new condo every few weeks, sometimes bringing lunch or offering to help hang pictures or assemble new furniture. Our conversations were careful at first, avoiding the most painful topics, but gradually growing more honest. During one such visit, about 3 months after the move, as we sat on my balcony drinking iced tea, he finally brought up Amanda directly. "We're seeing a counselor," he admitted. "There are trust issues to work through. What she planned with the house, the way she treated you, it made me question a lot of things." I listened without judgment, allowing him the space to process his own feelings about his marriage. The apartment is so expensive, he continued. We're barely making the rent even with both our incomes. It makes me realize how much we took advantage of your generosity living in your house for free all those months. Living beyond your means can put tremendous strain on a relationship, I observed. Robert and I had our tightest financial years when you were very young. We learned to be honest about money and make decisions together. James nodded thoughtfully. Amanda and I need to learn that too, among other things. I was careful not to push for details or offer unsolicited advice. James needed to navigate his marriage on his own terms, and I needed to respect his autonomy, even as we repaired our relationship. My own life blossomed in unexpected ways. The Riverside Point community offered activities and social events that I gradually began to participate in. I joined a book club that met in the clubhouse, started taking water aerobics classes in the community pool, and discovered a group of residents who gathered for coffee each morning in the Riverside gazebo. One particular friendship that developed was with my neighbor Frank, a 72-year-old retired history professor whose wife had passed away 2 years earlier. We bonded initially over container gardening on our adjacent balconies, sharing tips and cuttings. His knowledge of local history and dry sense of humor made him a delightful companion for exploring the riverside walking paths or visiting the farmers market that operated on weekends near our building. I never expected to enjoy apartment living so much. I confessed to Frank during one of our walks. I thought I'd miss my garden and the space of a house. It's liberating, isn't it? He replied. All those years maintaining a big home, and now someone else fixes the leaky faucets and mows the lawn. Leaves more time for actually living. He was right. Without the burden of home maintenance and the emotional weight of the conflict with Amanda, I found energy for new interests and activities. I volunteered at the hospital where I had once worked as a nurse, joined a community choir, and even took a watercolor painting class at the local community center. When I ran into former neighbors from my old neighborhood, they often expressed surprise at how well I looked. "Retirement suits you, Deirdre," they would say. "You're positively glowing." What they didn't understand was that it wasn't retirement that had changed me, but reclaiming my sense of self-worth and creating boundaries that protected my peace of mind. 6 months after moving to my condo, I invited Sylvia over for lunch on my balcony. As we enjoyed salads and white wine overlooking the river, she studied me with a satisfied smile. "I haven't seen you this happy in years," she observed, "not since before Robert passed." "I feel lighter," I admitted. "Like I've set down a heavy burden I didn't even realize I was carrying." "The house?" she asked. "Partly, but also the weight of trying to please everyone else at the expense of my own well-being. Of thinking my needs mattered less than James's or Amanda's, because I was older, because I was the parent, because I should be self-sacrificing." Sylvia nodded approvingly. "That's the biggest lesson in all this, isn't it? That standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary." Exactly. I kept enabling behavior that was harmful to all of us. Amanda never had to face consequences, James never had to take responsibility, and I just kept shrinking myself smaller and smaller to avoid conflict. And now, I gestured to the bright, airy condo around us to the river view, and the space that was entirely mine decorated, according to my taste, filled with only the things that brought me joy. Now I understand that possessions are less important than dignity, that sometimes losing what you thought you wanted leads to gaining what you truly need. The most unexpected benefit of the whole painful episode came nearly a year after the move. James called one evening, his voice tentative, but hopeful. "Mom, I wanted to let you know that Amanda and I are separating. It's been a long time coming, but we finally acknowledged we want different things in life." I expressed my sympathy, knowing that the end of a marriage is always painful, regardless of the circumstances. "Are you okay?" I asked. "Actually, yes. It feels like the right decision. We've both changed since we got married, or maybe we're just seeing each other clearly for the first time." He paused before continuing. "The way she treated you, what she tried to do with the house, it opened my eyes to patterns I hadn't wanted to see before. I'm sorry it ended this way, but I hope you both find happiness moving forward," I said sincerely. "There's something else," James added. "I've been offered a job in Chicago. It's a great opportunity, and I think a fresh start would be good for me. But it's far from you, and after everything that happened, I don't want to lose our relationship again. Chicago isn't so far, I assured him. There are direct flights and we can video chat regularly. A good opportunity shouldn't be missed, James. You're sure you'll be okay? I laughed softly at the role reversal, the son worrying about the mother he once assumed needed his protection. I'm more than okay, James. I have a full life here, good friends, activities I enjoy. I'd miss seeing you, of course, but I want you to follow your own path. After we hung up, I sat on my balcony, watching the city lights reflect on the river. I thought about the journey that had brought me here, the painful confrontation that had ultimately freed me, and the unexpected joy I had found in letting go of what I thought I needed to hold on to. The house on Maple Street had been a wonderful home for 40 years, but it had also become a shrine to the past, keeping me tethered to memories instead of creating new ones. Losing it had seemed like the end of something precious, but instead had become the beginning of something rich and fulfilling. Now, looking out at the glittering river and the vibrant city beyond, I felt a profound sense of peace and self-respect that had been missing during those difficult months with Amanda. I had learned that it's never too late to set boundaries, to stand up for yourself, to begin again. The most valuable things in life, I realized, aren't possessions or places, but the courage to honor your own worth and the wisdom to recognize when it's time to let go of the past to embrace the future. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision that ended up being the best thing for you, or found yourself having to stand up to family members who weren't respecting your boundaries? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it today. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that it's never too late to start a new chapter in your life.